Hey everybody, I'm your host, Gerry Schweitzer, and today we're back again with our ongoing chat with Jason Cohen, founder and CEO of Gastrograph AI. And as many as you know, Jason was the founder and executive director of the Tea Institute at Penn State, which oversees 20 plus researchers in 5 fields of study in traditional Chinese, Japanese, Korean tea. Jason's unique research in sensory science, machine learning, artificial intelligence, eventually led him to develop Gastrograph AI. I believe, Jason, you're a professional coffee, tea, and beer taster, which simply means you know a heck of a lot about what you're talking about when it comes to this subject. So today, in our ongoing series of Discovery, we'll be discussing innovation in food and beverage, superhuman creativity, and AI. Interesting subject in today's world. So let's get right down to it. You know, I was thinking about the title. It's an interesting title. I was thinking about innovation, and in general, especially with food and beverage. And why do we as humans have this innate need to invent, create, innovate, develop all these new tastes and beverages? And it seems that there are so many products popping up all the time. If I go into, I don't know, Whole Foods or wherever I go, Wegmans, for example, up here in Great Ithaca, New York. And yet I find products, and then sooner or later, they seem to disappear. So big questions going on. What's going on, Jason? Tell me what's going on in the world of new product development for consumer packaged goods. Are we really innovating? Has human creativity hit a wall? What's your take on all this?
Well, Gerry, thank you for that intro, and I'm happy to be on the air with you again. You know, I think both are true. I think that we are truly innovating. I think that there is a cycle of creation and destruction where things come in and out of preference, where people gain new experiences and are exposed to new flavors, and their preferences evolve. I mean, we've just come out of the largest systemic shock to consumer behavior since rationing and the draft and the wars, right? With COVID and COVID quarantines that affected us globally. We did a 600-person study across the United States that looked at new adaptations, new preferences that were acquired during COVID. And you look at things like on-premise sales for CSDs. A lot of people don't bring sodas into their home. They say, well, I don't drink soda at home, but if I'm at a bar, I'll have it with a Jack and Coke. That's an on-premise sale. If I'm at a sports stadium, I'll have a Coke. That's an on-premise sale. If I'm at a music or concert venue, I'll have one, or a movie theater, right? And all of these things are on-premise sales. On-premise sales disappeared throughout the world. And so people's ability to go out, their normal behavior patterns of when and how they consume that beverage, which was already a declining category, were heavily impacted. And for the most part, a lot of people didn't go back, right? They went through a year, 2 years, depending on where in the world they lived, of attenuation of not drinking CSDs, of not drinking sodas. And so now they come back to it, right? And it's too sweet. They don't want more of it. So in some cases, the innovation cycle is real. It's driven by consumer preference. It's driven by preference acquisition. It's driven by market forces. And the companies need to be able to innovate to keep up with those changing consumer preference. On the other hand, the other half of your question, right, is have we hit a wall? And I certainly think that we have reached a point in the industry where where companies have systems in place, highly structured, well-tuned systems that were tuned for yesterday's problem, that were tuned to make mass market products, that were tuned to make generally acceptable products that people all over the world can love, which is not today's problem, right? Today's problem is how can you be targeted? How can you create a problem? How can you create a product that is targeted at a specific consumer demographic where they have options and they say, I love this product. This is the product for me. This is a product that I want. And so, we saw that bifurcation with the beginning of some dietary things like keto and vegan. We saw it a little bit with some premiumization of traditionally non-premium categories. But it's only now that companies are coming to the realization, dragged there by the market, that that this is not a passing trend, right? That consumers, what you used to be able to sell globally will no longer pass. There's local competition, there's direct to consumer plays, there's startup and food tech companies that are producing niche products that are driven by direct to consumer, that are driven by e-commerce and the internet, that are driven by targeted advertising on TikTok and Instagram. And they're going to find a foothold, and they're going to outcompete your champion brands or your crown jewel brands because they can attract not a larger audience than you, not a larger consumer base, but they can attract a more dedicated consumer base. They can attract a more targeted consumer base. And so it's no longer about singular products, right? Now it's about, how do I create a portfolio of products, a set of products that cover the consumers whose preferences I need to meet. And that's where I think we've hit a wall. I do not think that companies are yet fully re-geared and retooled to producing those. And we see that because they're running an expensive M&A strategy. They're acquiring those breakout brands instead of being able to develop their own products that compete with them.
Right, and that's a problem, because I think new product development, or NPD, has hit a crossroad. You've defined it, you've looked at it now from the products we used to have, the basic products, the chips, the beer, the milk, the chocolate bar. It was, you had this bifurcation in all these, you had Miller and you had Bud, you had ABC, NBC, you had, in almost every field of American, post World War II to the millennium, in every category, you had these two big monsters, these two big crown jewels, as you said. You have Hershey's, you have Mars. Neither of which I liked, by the way, but okay. I would go for Belgium chocolate, but we see what happened to Kaibo recently. So what's going on with this crossroad? How do we get to food? If we're going to need a portfolio of products, as you've just described, we're going to need a lot more understanding of the marketplace in order to be that precise for smaller and smaller or fractionalized demos, as you just spoke about. What's the crossroad about?
Yeah, I think the crossroad is new technology. I think that this is where innovation can shine. I think being able, instead of using traditional methods for traditional results, the adoption of new technology is only becoming faster, right? Companies, if we think back, if we backpedal to the beginning of the industrial revolutions, right? Companies claimed, advertised, marketed to that they were electricity companies, right? You had Triscuit, the electric biscuit, powered by electricity, baked by electricity, right? That was an actual advertising campaign by Triscuit company, and it showed photos of the dam in New York City that was generating the turbines to make the electricity, right? But now today that would be crazy for any food company to advertise themselves as an electric company. Well, we've all adapted to the use of electricity, right? And then after electricity, it was the internet, right? Companies claim we're an internet company. It's not Amazon. It was Amazon.com, right? It was Pets.com. And companies said we're an online company, we're an internet company, right? But now obviously we've all adopted and we've all adapted where everyone's an internet company. And then the next one was big data, all right? And now we've all learned how to use big data. And then the next one was mobile. Facebook said we're a mobile first company. Everything's going to be mobile first, right? Now every company has an app. And so this is the technology adoption cycle. And so the next big one is artificial intelligence, and the ability to use artificial intelligence to understand people maybe better than they understand themselves, to actually be able to target and predict what it is that they're going to perceive and like and dislike in a product in a way that they could not explain, right? Consumers don't come to companies and say, really what I'm looking for is lychee and pine nut at a certain level of acidity modified by these other top notes, right? And if you could layer in a sweet base of Baker's vanilla, right, in order to carry it with a modulated time intensity curve so it has a clean finish, I'd love it, right? Consumers can't.
I ask for that all the time.
Oh, really? Yeah, but your industry, Gerry.
Right.
So, being able to understand the consumers and what they're demanding, but before they know, without them needing to vocalize it, right, is what AI can do. And we've seen it applied to all sorts of technologies, the abilities, the new text recognition, image recognition, video recognition is using some of the more advanced AI technologies, advertising in Google and Facebook, right? The ability to micro-target these ads. There's no reason you can't micro-target your flavor. And I'm using the word micro-target, but really it's about consumer cohorts, right? We're not yet at the point where we're making individualized, personalized product. We're at the point where you're saying, well, what does the city of New York need? Or what does the Northeastern United States need? Or what does all of the United States need? Or what does all of the United States and Canada need, right? And you think about this in terms of distributions of preferences. Can I develop a product that's going to meet the cross-section of consumer demographics and cohorts that are going to converge on this product? Okay. And it's up to the company how large or how small they want to be. Smaller companies can tackle smaller consumer demographics because it's a more right target, right? For the opportunity is correctly sized for the company size.
So, yeah, so you can use AI to imagine some creation, some new things, innovations, and perhaps get to better tastes than perhaps humans can do on their own, certainly within timeframes that we're talking about, because most of everybody here knows it takes an inordinate amount of time to come up with a new product. Some people talk about 2 years, 24 months in time. And yet the failure rate is, like, depending upon what you read, between 75 and 90% failure rate. So, replacing or displacing some of those crown jewels with new products may not be exactly what we want to do. We don't want to replace perhaps the Mars bar, but we want a certain amount of demos to switch over to something that is perhaps more in tune, as you're talking about, with what, the precision that you brought up earlier, with what they would like, perhaps.
That's it's not about replacement, right? We don't need a revolution on the brand. We don't need a revolution on the product. Nothing's going to come in and replace the Mars bar or Coca-Cola, right? But it's about the expansion opportunity, right? Can I create the derivative product, the +1 product? So this is a chocolate bar with something new. Maybe it's let's say kaffir lime leaves, right? Edible kaffir lime leaves embedded in the chocolate bar. Can I make a CSD that's going to bring back people, that's lower sugar, that's going to bring back people into the fold? So maybe that's something that's traditionally non-sweet, right? There's interest in functional benefits. We've seen that Coca-Cola has a functional version of Coke in vending machines in Japan, right? Can they bring this here? Can they expand the opportunity and bring more people into the market? And so it's not just about replacement, but it's using AI to find where those opportunities exist, to unlock opportunities that would not be obvious or would not be available or would not be findable, using only human intelligence that's only based on our own experience, our own ability to taste.
Right. Now that's just starting, right? Because really, if you go in, I walk into supermarkets all the time. I'm a foodie, as you know, and I love to cook and stuff like that. And I'll play the dumb guy, I'll go up to somebody and I'll say, where can you find this, and what do you buy when you're in front of that aisle? And they tell me why and what they like and how they've, latest recipes that they've used. So yeah, we're not replacing the Mars bar, but, we're just starting to figure things out in new ways, whether it's milk and you look at Oatly, or you look at Beyond Meat, or you look at other flavor combinations that you just brought up that are completely novel and seem to unlock flavor combinations. But then on the other hand, you speak to people and you realize very quickly, especially if you go down the snacking aisles, you see everything, just Me Too products, Me Too and Me Too and Me Too. You see the same chips with ruffles and ridges, and there's 5 different brands carrying the same chip. It's barbecue, it's jalapeno. I mean,
everyone now has a jalapeno chip. Everyone now has a spicy lime chip.
Yeah. So the novelty really hasn't hit many of these I just call that STEM technology. It's STEM off technology. You develop a chip and you just put in some flavor. I mean,
well, it's me too products, right? It's fast.
right,
It's a strategy around fast following and me too.
right,
And I'm torn on it, right? I mean, if someone comes out with a good idea, badly executed, that should absolutely demand a fast follow, right? If you can seize an opportunity that someone else has fallen flat on, right? Spicy lime is a great idea. People like that flavor. That is a good flavor of chip when it's well executed, right? So if there are fast follow opportunities out there, I'm not against that, right? What I'm against is doing it for the sake of filling a gap in the portfolio, using it as a crutch instead of a chance for innovation. So, I always say, there's the famous story. This is public information, right? But you keep harping on Mars bar, Gerry. The Chinese version of spicy Snickers. Alibaba said to Mars, we have our shopping cart level data. We know what the purchasing patterns are. People who are buying Snickers in China are buying a lot of mala chili products, and so we want a spicy version of Snickers. And Mars, for all intents and purposes, went and made it, and it's considered to be a success. But it's there's a good version of spicy Snickers, and there is a bad version of spicy Snickers, right?
right.
And above and beyond just validating that it's a good idea, right? It's about the execution and balancing those flavors and getting those flavors into a position that consumers aren't just going to trial it because the marketing is good or trial it because they're flavors that they've heard of before, but are actually going to like that product, to buy it again and again and again, right? To make it part of their regular consumption habits.
Right. And that's the key. It's not enough to just come up, which is why there's such a high failure rate. The key is to not just come up with something that's new or different, but to have something that's new and different, sustainable over time, because people are repeating their purchase.
Yeah. And I always say trials are easy, right? What we're predicting for is sustained preference. Does someone like this product enough to buy it again?
Right. And that's what's really important. I mean, I don't think, talking about hitting the wall, I don't think humans can predict. Perhaps it was easier in the past, post World War II America might have been easier. I'm not so sure, but certainly today we know it's difficult. Humans can't predict for all the flavor, aroma, and texture, as we're talking about, especially as that has now morphed and exponentially got increased in terms of demand and fit for different people and different demo groups. Talk to me about why we can't seem to, why we need AI.
Yeah, so we can't predict outside of our own experience, right? Humans can't say, I can't know, I can't experience what someone from a different demographic with different sensitivities, with different perceptual attributes, right? We talk about all the time, that the genetic flip between cilantro being floral and wonderful and it being soapy and terrible, right? But there are thousands of genetic changes that control your perceptions, and all of your preferences are built upon those layers of perception. So even if you have, something that people like, unless you know why they like it across those different demographic groups, you can't develop feature-based learning, right? If you perceive different things in the product, you might have convergent or divergent preferences, but for different reasons, because you might be perceiving different things. Right. And so, the ability of the AI is to take data from what I perceive in a product and to predict what you or people like you and other people who are dislike you, what they're going to perceive and what they're going to like and dislike. So the ability to use AI is about drawing experience, drawing inspiration, drawing knowledge from across multiple demographics, from multiple countries, from multiple different types of people. And when we look at what the types of creations that the AI can unlock, when we're really most challenging the AI, when a company comes to us with real greenfield, blue sky questions, which is not that often, right? Most of the time they're coming to us with a known specific, we must develop a new X, I need to improve and renovate Y, and I need to launch this in country Z, right? That's the day-to-day. But every once in a while, a company comes and says, it needs to be brand new, unlike anything else on the market, right? What can we do? And when we run that optimization, we see the AI is able to pull things from all sorts of different cultures, from different categories. And so it's able to, when we're developing a coffee product, it's pulling information, not just from coffee or things that are adjacent to coffee, right? It's pulling things from salty snacks, from beef jerky, from instant noodles. It has all sorts of information available to it that wouldn't register to human formulators. We think about what is the gold standard of creativity in human formulators. Sometimes there's ideation, sometimes there's social listening, which means that people are already talking about it, and sometimes there's RCA chefs, right? Love the RCA chefs, but the RCA chefs are just as limited about their experience and about being human, right, as the formulators or the flavorists who are tasked with developing the product. So when you're thinking about international development, when you're thinking about developing for a new multicultural society, right? You mentioned post-World War II, it was easy in the United States. Everyone was targeting one demographic, right?
Right. That's right. Exactly.
That's not the case anymore, right? Even products that are launching in Europe are now frequently pan-Europe, 4, 5, 6, 7 countries at a time.
Right. It's amazing. So AI seems to be poised to drastically change innovation at the company level. Who now at the company level uses AI? Who is, in your mind, more conversant with AI, more comfortable with AI as a part of the process?
Yeah, that's a hard question. I think it depends more on company culture than it does on specific role. And we're in a United States company. We're based here in New York, right? We have team members that are both here in the United States and in Singapore, Hong Kong, Shanghai, Nigeria, Turkey, Paris. So fairly global company despite being small. And I will say that in the United States, when we go and talk to companies and say, this is what the AI can do, the United States has proven it, right? When we go and talk to companies in Asia, particularly China, and we say, this is what the AI can do, they say, great, will you be able to do 600 products a year? Will you be able to deliver? What's the runtime? What's the model train update and runtime? Because we're going to want this updated at least weekly, if not daily. What's your server capacity? Because we're going to 3x the amount of data that's flowing through the system within the first year, right? It's much more operationally minded. And the difference is the experience that companies have with AI, right? In the United States, we see AI very obliquely. We see it's frequently a background process. It's frequently hidden from us, right? In China, I'm not going to make a value judgment on it, right? But they have the facial recognition everywhere. You enter a building, it recognizes your face, it matches you with your ID, and the door turns green or red, whether you're not allowed to enter. When you're applying for credit, right? It shows the AI scores. When you're applying for insurance, it shows the AI scores. When you're applying for travel, it shows the AI scores. So the experience of AI and the familiarity with AI varies greatly depending on the country. Within CPG, within food and beverage industry, beyond that, I think that there's maybe two different paths of AI. There's the business focus on AI, which is frequently at the executive level. There's frequently some concept or some idea. We need to bring AI into the enterprise. We need to be able to figure out how to use and leverage new technology. And that this is standard business practice. On the functional and the operational side, I would say that probably the R&D team or the NPD team are the most ready and willing to work with AI. And that, again, varies by company, varies by country.
Well, that would make sense. It was like the question I asked you, we were talking, I guess it was last week or 2 weeks ago, and I said, do you consider yourself a food technologist? Which is, I think, a very important question. And your answer to me was yes.
Yep.
Which led me to say Gastrograph AI is a company built by food technologists for food technologists. So it seems to me that you're at least talking to the people who you've just described, in America at least, as the people who will be at the forefront of bringing AI into the company.
Well, it's true. I mean, I was a tea taster. I was a sensory scientist long before I got into machine learning and artificial intelligence. I started in the sensory science department. I found, I didn't love math growing up, despite now, being pretty heavily invested in mathematical technologies. And it wasn't until statistics that everything clicked to me. I didn't love math. I wasn't specifically bad at it. Wasn't specifically good at it. I, suffered through it like everyone else. And as soon as it came to statistics, we said, oh, we can actually make predictions. We can take data and make some inference, make some predictions about the future. We can test how reliable these predictions are. Everything clicked. My life changed, right? And so I took all of this tasting experience and all of this data that I've been collecting on perceptions, and it all started with tea, and then it grew into coffee, and then it grew into beer, and it continued to spiral from then. We added our first food products, salty snacks, in 2016. That was 9 years into starting the research. Research started in 2009. It was all focused on beverages. 2016 expands to food and solid products. We add our texture analysis. So it was a pretty wild ride, and now we have a data science team, individuals who have PhDs in physics, who used to work at CERN, who work on all sorts of amazing things, right? But when I still personally oversee the data science team, it's the only team that I continue to directly manage, and it's all about it's not just traditional data science or traditional statistics. The traditional mathematical techniques, the traditional statistical techniques don't work on human perception, right? Humans are squishy bags of water filled with opinions.
Right. That's one way of putting it.
And those opinions change. So
Right.
It's not like we have a reliable measurement tool. What we need to do is be able to build predictions around distributions that are reliable and that are robust and that continue to grow. So, I'm very proud of my background as a food person first, and all my work in machine learning, artificial intelligence has always been applied to food and beverage industry. This is what I've always done.
Right. So when you go around the world, usually at different various conferences in various parts of the world speaking, and you meet food technologists and people, I guess you would meet brand marketers as well. But at the food technology level, the pressures are heavy now. Pressures are heavy now. First of all, there's more of them because the companies need to expand and develop more and more products in this fractionalized world, as we talked about. But the pressures are not negligible. I speak to some of them, people I've known at Unilever and other companies as well, and it's difficult. They have many envelopes of responsibility that they perhaps didn't have in the past. What do you talk to them about? What are they most interested in?
They're most interested in the opportunity to do things that weren't previously possible. So right now, the pressure it's true. There's pressure on the food technologists. There's pressure on the company overall, and then there's financial pressures. So the response, more data is now available than ever been possible. There are more products on the market than there have ever been before. There's a higher amount of verification. There's a higher amount of small niche brands that are taking market share from big brands. And so because of that, you need to collect, if you want to run research, you have to collect more data on more products, on more consumer demographics. And it's never been predictive of product success. They're still looking at the same level of product failure. And so when executives or research managers or anyone looks at that, the response is generally, not in every company, but generally been, well, let's collect less data. Let's just test our product. Let's just do light, simple, fast testing, rapid testing that give us directional instead of specific information. So they've actually looked at everything that's going on in the world and said, actually, you know what, let's do less testing. Let's reduce the amount of testing that we're doing. And they're right that they're doing that because it's not helpful. If it was more helpful, they would do more testing. And so I think AI has the opportunity here to reverse that trend, to say, actually,
To be more helpful.
To be more helpful, exactly. That we can reduce the amount of data that we need to collect. We can use that data to make reliable, repeatable predictions about target consumer demographics, and we can recycle that data for future work, right? And you're not just doing one-off testing where it goes into a void and no one ever looks at it again.
Right. I've seen, yeah, and we've seen new technology come on board now. We've seen technology pretending to be a predictive framework. We've seen technology like the metadata companies is, that I looked at and follow, and they hit a wall too. They can't predict sensory. They're scraping basically what we all have in front of us. All the websites they deem appropriate. They're scraping for ingredients. There's social listening, recipes, menus. That's history. That doesn't give you predictions. That tells you what people are perhaps concerned with on their kitchen table and what they're purchasing, what they like to eat at restaurants. But it doesn't tell you what's happening tomorrow, what flavor combinations should be put together in ways that humans can't even imagine today, as you just spoke about. So talk to me about what are the core benefits of a predictive framework?
Yep. So yeah, when we think through what does the AI need to achieve, not just to be comparable to traditional techniques, but to actually exceed traditional techniques. I used that example earlier in the webinar about the electricity to internet to data to phones, right? And it wasn't that electricity was equivalent to steam power. It was that proverbial 10x better. That it was quieter, it was faster, it was quieter, it was cheaper, it was cleaner, and you were able to deliver it from a distance using wires, right? It was 10x better than steam power. That's what it required to be adopted. The internet wasn't just a better encyclopedia, it wasn't just comparable to an encyclopedia, right? It was 10x better. It was a new communication platform, a new commerce platform that allowed for things that weren't previously possible. Their phone in the pocket wasn't just a cell phone, right? When smartphones came out, it was 10x better. It allowed for new connections, for mobile computing, for edge computing that wasn't previously possible. It allowed for business models that weren't previously possible. So when we think through what does it take for AI to be 10x better than traditional methods, right? We see four things. First is predictive power. So we actually have to be able to make predictions about the future that come true. We have to be able to collect data from non-representative consumers anywhere in the world, and then predict what they'll taste and like and dislike in your target demographic, the demographic that you're targeting with your research, with your development, with your new product, right? And the way that we do that is by being question agnostic. One of the major problems in traditional methodologies is you have to guess at the answer before you have any data. So if you want to know if product's different, you have to run a different test. If you want to know if it's similar, you run a similarity test. If you want to know if it's preferred, you run a hedonic test. If you want to know why it's preferred, you can run an attribute scaling, right, or jar scales. And those things are, because of the way it's based on experimental design, you can't reuse that data. So by designing the system to be entirely question agnostic, right, we take data on what people perceive in the product and how much they like it, and use that to build perceptual feature-based learning in order to model drivers of preferences and dispreferences, perceptual differences between different populations, and to be able to run that optimization paradigm in order to create better products. And this works, right, because it's all compound learning. So every time we collect new data, the system gets smarter. The AI is always learning, it's always on, it never gets tired, it never forgets, right? The data that's entering the system now is going to make today's predictions better, and it's going to multiply as we continue to collect more data in the future.
But it also makes your predictions portable. In other words, from a demographic, a similar demographic in one country to a similar demographic in another country, you can predict what that similar demographic in another country will like and to what degree it'll like.
Exactly.
Which is amazing to me. That blows my mind. That's really like, I bring you a prototype for London and chocolate bars, and you can tell me what people in Germany will like or not like about it without even going there to do a test. It's unbelievable.
That's the most unbelievable part of the system, and it's the part of the system that's been the most validated. So everyone says prove it. And so we have our double-blind validation study that was run by Ajinomoto and Ipsos. We have our validation studies that were run internally with many companies. And that's part of the core technology. So the ability to collect data anywhere and predict for anywhere, I think, is one of the things that make us 10x better.
Yeah, that portability, the fact that there are no borders with data, there's just demos and culture.
Yep, exactly.
It's that concept is a shift. It's a huge revolutionary. That's where I think there's a revolutionary shift going on here. That the portability of the data that the AI does not see the borders that traditionally humans see, which obviously are walls that we hit. The AI doesn't have those walls. So it can predict across, vertically and horizontally as well. So truly remarkable stuff. What are so data is the key driver here. Talk to me about this ever learning platform.
There's two sides to the ever learning platform. On one side, what we like to do is totally abstract away any form of we like to abstract away data collection and the friction around data collection from the companies that use our platform. Companies are used to thinking in terms of what's the sample size, what's what's the screener, what's the target, are we going, how many cities are we testing in? We would like to totally abstract that away. So companies can say, here are the products, here's the demographic that I'm targeting. I might update the demographic in the future. I haven't decided yet, right? And we can profile the products, have the data in the system, and use it for whatever they want in the future. And so that's on the customer side, right? On our side, internally, we spend a lot of time thinking about the data and the data collection. We've done large-scale consumer testing, do all of our own large-scale consumer testing in more than 30 countries, more than 45 cities. It's actually probably more than that, right? We have regional level predictions in 2/3 of the countries that we're operational in. And so when we update those models every 3 to 5 years, sometimes faster. China and Indonesia, we have to do it much more frequently. And so when we think about the benefit of that, right, we always say reduce, reuse, recycle. I've said this once already, but we need to reduce the total amount of data that we need to collect. We need to be able to reuse that data to answer new questions and different questions as they come up. Then we need to be able to recycle that data across category, across demographic, and across time. So if a company comes to us this year and says, I'm thinking of launching a new product, here are 5 different prototypes that my flavor house or my development partner gave me. Tell me which one to launch. And we stack rank those and we say, you know what, you got to go, mango is number 1, jojoba berry is number 2, and peach is number 3. When they say, okay, I'm only going to launch one this year, they come back the next year. Under traditional methods, they'd have to repanel that. They'd have to repanel the same things, or they'd have to repanel the same ideas. They say, we're thinking of launching the next flavor now, right? Can you rerun those 3 flavors on the newest model? What's changed and what's the right thing to launch now, right? And maybe it turns out that peach has climbed in preference, or maybe it turns out that both have fallen in preference, right? But being able to reduce that amount of data that we collect, reuse it for multiple projects, and recycle that across countries, demographics, and time is the goal of the platform.
And so how does that compare what you've just described? Well, first, what's the time frame that you can do those things in?
If we don't need to collect new data, we can do it in under a week.
That's incredible. That's remarkable. And how is that different, not just the timing, but all the other dimensions that you talked about here in terms of collection, the type and kind of sensory data you get and you can reuse? How is that different than CLTs and traditional methods?
Yeah. Well, under a traditional method, you'd have to go find a CLT firm or recruit it yourself, screen them to make sure that they're category users within the target consumer demographic, that they haven't been on a different CLT or competitor CLT in the previous 3 months. You'd have to, depending on what the panel goal is, you might have to train them even if you're just doing consumer sensory, consumer descriptive analysis, you're going to have to choose an experimental design to determine what type of results you get. And it all takes 6 weeks to 6 months, depending on where and how you're doing it. You know, one of the pandemic, generally, right, everyone wishes the pandemic didn't happen. But one of the things that happened to us was companies realized that they weren't going to be able to do large-scale consumer testing and large-scale consumer research
Right.
For the foreseeable future, right? And through that, we gained a number of customers that have found that we're not only better because of the lack of logistical complexity and the lack of effort that's required, right? We abstract all that away from them, but it's better because the results make their products more successful.
Right. Amazing. So yeah, I mean, some of the old style traditional companies just can't reach some of the parts you can reach, and I don't mean geographically. So it's an interesting understanding of how AI takes data and uses data in a totally different fashion than traditional methods. What I like to describe to people when they ask me about, you know, what is it AI can do? And I say, well, AI is like everything else, except more so. So that when you really apply in the application of data, smart data in a smart way, you can have smart data and not be smart about it, right? You can affect NPD outcomes. And I think everybody listening is trying to figure out, how can I use AI in my company or with what I do now to affect outcomes? We will faster, better, cheaper. I mean, how can I use AI? How can I understand what Jason's talking about and actually apply it in my life right now to some of the issues I have? And that's what I think is really important, is to be able to get down to the nitty-gritty, to where the rubber meets the road, to help people get through problems and give them real solutions, timely solutions that are going to be more robust than anything they've imagined in the past. Talk to me about how we can affect outcomes.
I think we affect outcomes by being involved throughout a product lifecycle, right? Looking at concepting, which is what to make. So whether that's a reformulation or whether that's a new development, targeting on how to target existing products, whether for sub-demographics or particular consumer cohorts within each country, formulation tools to actually hit those target flavor profiles, and then emerging preference predictions to inspire the formulators and the marketers and the team on where they should be looking for their next major product, their next major innovation. So having tools at every stage of a product lifecycle creates a unified product development platform driven by data, right? That they can always look back and see just how successful it was.
That's great. The other question I get, and I'm sure you do too, in speaking with people, prospects, people who are just naturally interested, people who are, you know, I've talked to you about this. They're toe dipping, right? They're dipping their toe into the water. They want to make sure the water is right for them. We've all done that. We all do that. How do you work? What's your your way of working at the enterprise level, at the corporate level? Who do you work with? How have you been able to work with? I'm sure there are different modalities and flexibility, but explain that. How does a company say, someone listening now says, yeah, let me call them. I want to talk to Jason. I have this particular issue. You know, our goals this year are really, we've got to bump it up. We need 2 more products. We want to optimize. We want to shift and lift. You know, let me talk to Jason. How would you tell this person how you would go about working with them?
Yeah. So almost every company starts on fixed scope projects. They say, I have a problem, right? Can your technology help me solve it? Right. And hopefully the answer is yes, right? If they're in R&D, that could be new developments or it could be reformulations. If they're in brand marketing, that could be looking at targeting and flavor profile communication. If they're on sales, looking at different regions, that could be lift and adapt or lift and shift. Where can the different products go? And executive teams are frequently using us to keep abreast of what's changing in the market. right? It's a question of what are our competitors doing? What's changing? What's out there that I haven't seen? And so once one of those teams, any one of those teams or multiple of those teams have run as needed project work with us, have seen the success of the system, they can convert over to a subscription, right? Unlimited usage for a country, unlimited usage for a category. And that's, I think, where the real value gets unlocked, because then you can start resourcing this against things that would have nevertheless pulled budget, right? Where it's just an idea, or it's just a maybe, or you're still just exploring. Those things in CPG companies generally don't get budget, but that's frequently where the magic happens, right? So when companies convert over to subscription, they're not just unlocking unlimited utility value on being able to use it for the things that they're budgeted against. They're unlocking utility value and being able to use it for things that they never otherwise would have paid to learn about. And I think that's an area that is underappreciated, because companies aren't so used to having those open scope access.
Right. How many times when you're working with other clients, at what times do you fit in with their teams, with their R&D teams? How do you work with those teams? Do you work remotely? Do you embed with them? How does that work?
So companies can hold us as closely or as far away as they like. Most of the time when we get started, they hold us pretty close. It's a little bit of a bear hug.
Right.
But over time, they can say, okay, I have this, right? We don't need you in the room. We don't need the explanation. And that's great. That's exactly what we want. We want to empower companies to go from AI is new, AI is scary, I need to be shown how and why it works. AI has all this promise, but there's things that I need to learn in order to use it, in order to trust it, in order to take actions based on it. To the point where they say, I got this, right? I know my products better than anyone, right? Now that I have your data and your system, let me apply the predictions in the way that I know how to do it best. And that's great. We want all companies to go through that cycle, right? Of relying on us, which we're happy to do, to self-sufficient, self-service, unlimited usage model, right? That's the crawl, walk, run path.
Gotcha. Yeah, exactly as how you described the usage of electricity in the past. Once you get to use it, once you get to get to understand how to use it and bring it within your zone of familiarity and usage on a daily basis. So that's great. Listen, I think we've run the course of our time. I would just like to say something that I think is an evidence for everyone that has to deal with the subject matter that we've talked about. I think, as in the past and as in the present and will be in the future, data is the secret ingredient of great products. It's just a matter of how much data do you have, how pertinent is it, and how do you get to apply it, which I think AI, in terms of what we've talked about, has amazing promise and great upside to it. So I wanted to thank you for your time and all the questions I peppered you with. I think they're interesting questions. If anyone out there has questions for us and for Jason, please note them and we will discuss them. And if we need to, we'll get back to you. But please let us know what you think and help us make these discussions even more timely and more relevant.
Well, thank you, Gerry.
Right.
I'm very, very happy to have had this conversation with you. Thank you for hosting.
Sure.
Looking forward to the next webinar.
Yeah, I think the next one will be in August at some time, and we're going to try to come up with something relevant, obviously, perhaps a little bit controversial. We'll see. We hope to have guests on as well, so we can pepper our talk at least with some outside influences that are directly relatable to some of the things we're talking about with AI. But thanks for your time, Jason. Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Right. Bye.